Before we can understand the bilingual approach in deaf education, we need to touch on what deaf education is. In the 1800s, students who were deaf or had hard hearing were sent to the Connecticut Asylum for the Deaf and Dumb. When more schools for the deaf opened up, sign language started being used. Sign language was the use of your hands representing letters or words to communicate with the deaf. It became a universal language over time. In today's society, deaf education is a field of special education. Deaf education is for students who have any form of hearing loss or deafness. It can be a variety of accommodations for these kinds of students, like educational plans for just the individual, monitor methods of teaching, materials that are adaptive, and settings that are accessible for the student's needs. The bilingual approach was created because students who were receiving education using just sign language weren't getting the most out of their learning. Being a bilingual deaf student meant that you learned two languages. Your first language is sign language, and your second language was the language that the students reside. But English was the most common language that was used in this approach. The bilingual approach not only focuses on having students know two languages, but also exposes students to two cultures. Being bicultural is important for these students because they are a part of the deaf culture and the culture they are surrounded by. For an example, the American culture. There are 4 goals that bilingual education wants to achieve. The approach wants the student with the deafness to be linguistically competent. This means the student will be able to use sign language and be able to speak in the language that they are bilingual in. For an example, to be able to sign and communicate by speaking English. The second goal is to have access to a wide curriculum. This gives students more opportunities to learn than having a limited curriculum of basic education. The approach also wants to facilitate good literacy skills. Having good literacy skills like phonetic awareness, vocabulary, awareness of print, reading comprehension, and spelling will set students up for success when they move on to bigger things in life. And last but not least, they want to give students a sense of their own identity. A lot of students with disabilities find themselves very stuck and struggle finding who they are. These are 4 important goals that the bilingual approach wants to hit in order to have students with deafness succeed in school. Not only does the bilingual approach set students up for success, it has a few other benefits too. The bicultural education approach is very accessible. Students will be paired up with teachers who know sign language and the native language they are trying to learn. Not only is there help in school, help will be provided in the home. Sign language models will help parents adjust, teach them how to use it in the home environment, and how to help the student to their best ability. At school, there will be many other students who know how to sign, so there will be learning from peers available. Being bicultural means being involved in a second culture, and students with deafness will be able to learn and participate in deaf culture. In the deaf culture, there are a variety of people who come from different backgrounds, and it has its own history, story, and art. Although there are benefits for the bilingual approach for deaf education, there are some general issues that come up. It is assumed that there are transferable skills from signing in sign language to reading and writing in English, but there is no evidence that it is possible to transfer those kind of skills. There are also issues on thinking and deafness. When a student with deafness thinks differently, the bilingual approach might not necessarily benefit their thinking. Another issue is that this kind of education is becoming more popular, and many are calling their approaches bilingual education, which means bilingual education needs to have more specific criteria, curriculum areas, and minimal requirements. There are also issues that are rising from using the bilingual approach. Children who are learning sign language don't have a strong foundation on how to learn sign language. Many of them learn from students who are also learning, or from their parents who are also learning to sign. They are being provided with good models of the language. Another issue with the bilingual approach is the curriculum. These students, there seems to be a gaping hole in what is the normal process for the development of the child. There needs to be a more stable curriculum that will stretch skills and correct errors throughout the approach. It is hard to assess development and keep track of a student's progress with sign language, and the approach is still looking for ways to assess students. There is difficulty trying to achieve age-appropriate language development, and the only way to start students is when they are younger. Another issue arises with the parents. In order for progress to increase, parents need to work with their child, but a lot of the time they don't understand and need deaf tutors to help the child. The curriculum and assessments also need help. Bilingual education requires the students to read and write in another language. The approach has some holes in it because it doesn't know which language a student should learn to read and write in, which makes the curriculum a little confusing and not uniform. The approach has questions like how to assess bilingualism and how to evaluate it. There's also issues that arise up in training to work for bilingual educational settings. They need to figure out how to train teachers and support workers who are going to work in that kind of setting. So research says a strong correlation exists between American Sign Language fluency and English literacy skills. It also says that American Sign Language skills improve as English skills also improve, which is a positive correlation. Sign language skills are crucial factors in educational achievement and English literacy. Individuals who learn sign language from birth perform better on linguistics and memory tasks than individuals who do not start learning sign language until after puberty. Deaf students educated bilingually not only reach the level of linguistically competence equal to their hearing peers, but they also have better self-esteem and have higher self-respect. They are less impulsive and behavior disorders are rare. They are emotionally more mature, more independent, and socially better adapted. There's actually a school that practices the bilingual approach, and it's called Washington School for the Deaf. The school has ASL English Bilingual Professional Development Program, and they have an academic ASL specialist and ASL English dual language preschool program, and their students have better self-esteem and higher respect. And here's a short clip of testimonies of families that go to Washington.
He's made amazing progress, and I think that just how much ASL is going on in the classroom has really made the difference. So he's just exposed to it all day.
Every deaf child can learn just the same as hearing children can. And I think that that's one problem, is that often there are misconceptions about deaf children's abilities.
Before I got to WSD, I didn't sign well. I used a little bit of gesturing. When I got here, I got better and better.
For preschool through second grade, Julian attended public school, and although he had an interpreter, he was struggling.
Start telling me, I just want to read at recess. I don't want anybody to talk to me. And I'm like, no, he's outgoing. That's not in his spirit. And so we started looking at different schools and was wowed by this school because the socialization at recess and lunch and in the classroom is amazing.
11-year-old Gabrielle, who is hard of hearing, attends WSD and loves her school.
Came to the school, fell in love with it, the teachers, the one-on-one, the bilingual, the support for speech, for occupational therapy Gabby had at that time. There was a plethora of resources for us. And